Sorry to give you my backside, but people have told me that's my best feature. I figured I'd start there. Okay. I want to talk about poetry some more, and I want to talk specifically about this idea called imagery. And I've got a little definition here. This is not perfect by any means. I'm sure there are experts out there who can write something better than I have. But here's what I want you to really know about imagery in poetry. First of all, I'm going to talk about just the word imagery. Think about what's in the word, almost. The word image. An image is something we see, like a photograph. And imagery in poetry is the same idea. You take an experience and you try to stick it into someone else's head the way you experienced it. It's usually something very memorable or powerful to you. The words I really want to have stuck in your head are vivid, the five senses, and mood. And I'm going to explain why. First of all, vivid. TVs a long time ago, they weren't that great, okay? I had to suffer through black and white TV, and then I moved on to color, but even then I didn't realize that my TV wasn't that great, that the image was actually kind of fuzzy until HD TV came along. Once we got to high def, I got to see what we call vivid pictures, the kind of view you might see when you're actually outside looking at it. Sharp is what vivid means. And that's what you're trying to do with poetry and imagery in poetry. Create a very sharp experience or picture in someone's head or a feeling. And to do that, authors or poets will jump into the five senses. A lot of what they write is what we can picture because we spend all day looking at things and that's what we're used to. Sometimes, though, they might try to go after a taste or a smell, okay, or a sense of touch. But using your five senses typically is how they get to this idea of putting an image, the way they experienced it, into your head. And a lot of times imagery is about developing a mood to put you in a special emotional state so you feel it the way they did. I have a poem we can look at. It's nice and short. An example of imagery would be this poem, When It Is Snowing. When it is snowing, the blue jay is the only piece of sky in my backyard. Okay, is that a powerful poem? I don't know. It's awfully short. I don't see a lot of great figurative language going on. I don't know. But did it create an image? Yeah, for me it did, and I hope it did for you too. The idea that when it's snowing, you see pretty much whiteness everywhere, and then this person looks out into their backyard and they happen to catch a glimpse of a blue jay, and it's the only blue they see against the white. That's kind of like a popping image to me, and I found a picture for it. Maybe it looked like that. That's kind of cool. Okay? A person saw that and figured out a way to write something very short and sweet that put that image into my head and hopefully into your head. Let's do another short one. Poppies. So if you don't know what a poppy is, it's a type of flower. The light in them stands as clear as water drawn from a well. When the breeze moves across them, they totter. You half expect them to spill. Okay, first time I read this one, I was a little disappointed because I'm used to poems that rhyme, and this one didn't have a rhyme all the way through, so a little disappointed there. But it reminded me of something I probably should have known. Poems don't have to rhyme. This one here again, we're looking at imagery. The poet wants us to imagine something, so I'm going to zip back in here. Let's see what he's trying to get us to picture in our heads. The light in them stands as clear as water drawn from a well. Okay, so there's a comparison here. I see the word as. It must be a simile. What's being compared? Light and the clear, clean water you see from a well. They're being compared to one another. Okay, so the light inside the poppy flower is as clear and clean as water from a well. I'll continue. When the breeze moves across them, they totter. You half expect them to spill. Oh, now I kind of get it. So picture a poppy, okay? This is my poppy, okay? And it basically has so much light shooting down into it that it's as if it's filled with this crystal clear water. And tottering means something's about to fall over. It's not quite there, but it wants to. It's just so close. And the poet says, I'm going to play with that idea of water spilling out when I really mean sunlight coming out of that poppy. Kind of a cool image, right? Very simple image, but they captured it well. And I found a picture. Is it exactly as the poet described? No, but it's pretty close. All right, last one. And then if you want to stop the video after this one, you're welcome to do so. But I do have two more. One is particularly challenging, and then I have a final one that I want to just kind of throw in there out of curiosity. So this one is called The City, and it's by Langston Hughes. In the morning, the city spreads its wings, making a song in stone that sings. In the evening, the city goes to bed, hanging lights above its head. Okay, so this is a longer poem than the other two. I've got two stanzas now instead of just one. And I did notice something right away. And there's this big word called juxtaposed, and it does get used in poetry a lot. It's the idea that you take two opposite things and you put them in your poem and you kind of talk about them and what the relationship might be, even though they're opposites. And in this one, we have the morning on one side, and on the other side, we have the evening, and we're talking about the city. The poet names it the city, and that's what he's talking about. So what do I learn? Well, in the morning, the city spreads its wings, making a song in stone that sings. Okay, well, I know this isn't literal because cities don't have wings and they don't sing songs. So I'm guessing this is some type of figurative language going on. But I am getting a pretty image, right? It's morning time. The city wakes up and stretches out like a bird might flap its wings. You can't see my arms going crazy, but you get the idea. And then it makes a song like a bird might begin to sing. And then in stone it sings. I had to think this one through. A city is basically made out of concrete, so I guess you can call it stone. So to me, the city is waking up and singing the song, which would be like car beeps and people going off to work and all that kind of stuff. And then he moves on, juxtaposes it. He goes the opposite direction and just jumps to nighttime. What do we get? In the evening, the city goes to bed, hanging lights above its head. Okay, so what might that be? I'm trying to picture that. Well, apartment buildings and skyscrapers go very high into the sky, so they light up at night. That could be what he's talking about. Maybe he's referring to the stars coming out at night. I don't know exactly. But I do get an image of lights above the city, right, spread out all over the place. And that's kind of a nice little image. By the way, the little writing technique he used, the figurative language technique here, is personification. In the second part, it says, in the evening, the city goes to bed, hanging lights above its head. I got news for you. The city is an inanimate object. It's not alive. It can't do anything. And yet in this poem, he had it go ahead and hang lights above itself. He had to act like a bird. Okay. He personified the city. All right. Just to recap. Imagery in poetry is when you are trying to put a crystal clear, vivid image into somebody's head. Usually it's something you experienced. You want them to see it as you saw it. You want them to feel it as you saw it, or feel it as you felt it. And to do that, you usually rely on the five senses and, of course, all those figurative language techniques that we've been looking at and that you've probably been practicing. It's about capturing a mood a lot of the times. Not always, but a lot of the time. And that's all you need to know. I've got two more if you want to stick around. And if not, have a good day. All right. My last two, they are more complex, but maybe you'd be interested in hearing me analyze something a little more complex. So this one is called Check by James Stevens, and I got to admit, it kind of threw me for a loop the first time I read it. And it begins this way. The night was creeping on the ground. She crept and did not make a sound until she reached a tree, and then she covered it and stole again along the grass beside the wall. I heard the rustle of her shawl, and she threw blackness everywhere, upon the sky and ground and air. And in the room where I was hid, but no matter what she did, to everything that was without, she could not put my candle out. So I stared at the night, and she stared back solemnly at me. Wow. Okay, so here's my analysis. First of all, I want to go back and think about what is the poem about. It seems to be about nighttime. And the poet has gone ahead, if you're looking at the first stanza, the first line, personified nighttime. The night was creeping on the ground. She crept and did not make a sound. Well, look, night can't creep. People, creatures can creep. So to make the night creep is personifying it. She crept right there. The poet compares night to a female. And she's not making sound. until she reaches a tree, and then she covers the tree. So nighttime comes across the tree. And stole again along the grass beside the wall. That was the part that really had me struggling. I think what's going on here is this is an old poem, and what it was supposed to have said was, and stole again along the grass beside the wall. The poet, I believe, is Irish. And so maybe that's the way they say the word stole. The idea here is that the nighttime not only covered the tree, but then stole or snuck again along the grass beside the wall. She's sneaking up to this narrator's house because I heard the rustle of her shawl as she drew blackness everywhere. So a shawl is like a pullover cloak, and she's throwing blackness all over everything. And the narrator hears it. Upon the sky and the ground and the air. So it's everywhere, of course, because that's how night comes. And in the room where I was hid. But no matter what she did, to everything that was without, she could not put my candle out. So night is trying very hard, this womanly night, to put out the candle. But no matter how hard she tries, she can't do it, right? Because it's light. So I stared at the night, and she stared back solemnly at me, meaning seriously. So the person, the narrator with the candle, in nighttime, they stare back at one another. I can picture that. A person in a room with a tiny little candle holding off all the darkness, right? And here's why I thought this was such a cool poem. It's called Check. And I'm thinking of what that means in chess. If you play the game of chess, the object is to beat your opponent by getting their king. But before you can capture their king, you have to warn them. You have to tell them, I put you in check. I am ready to take your king from you unless you make a move to get it out of the way, or unless you can't do anything about it. If you can't, you're in checkmate, you lose the game. But if you can move, you should move. These two things, the female nighttime and the narrator holding the candle, they're in check. No side can win so long as the candle keeps burning and nighttime is still there until morning comes. Very cool. All right, one last one. This one is by my favorite poet of all time. You'll understand why when I get done with it. My heart slamming against my chest is not what I notice while the world spirals around me, or the way my knees pivot down and up through every watery mogul, nor how my hurtling speed wicks the heat from my bronze-finished skin. Those sensations will be relived by me later, afterward. Now I feel the rush of blood in my ears like someone rubbing wool over them. Now it's the heavy taste of salt in my mouth as my left hand cleaves the looming wall of rotating water beside me. Now it's the steady, brilliant ball light that beckons to me, even as it shatters itself into ricocheting greens and blues inside the vortex I jet through. Trying desperately to hand me the illusion. It's not trying to cast me off its mighty back, not trying to crush me beneath its terrible, terrifying weight. All right. So this poet is going for some really sharp imagery here. The question is, can you picture what the poet is trying to put into your head? It begins, the heart is slamming, the world is spiraling, so it's kind of spinning. I don't know why it is, but it is. There's pivoting as somebody goes over watery moguls. If you ski, you know what a mogul is. It's those little tiny hills that when you go down a hill, it makes your knees pop up and down really fast, almost into your chest. Those sensations will be relived by me later. Okay, so afterward, the person's going to think about all that, but not now. Now it's about the rush of blood in their ears, like wool rubbing over them. So they sound very excited. Now it's the heavy taste of salt in my mouth as my left hand cleaves the looming wall of rotating water beside me. So salt and a wall of water that's rotating next to them. It sounds like the ocean. Now it's the steady, brilliant ball of light that beckons to me, even as it shatters itself into ricocheting greens and blues inside the vortex I jet through. Well, I didn't get any of that until I read Vortex. And a vortex is a swirling body of water. Think of when you flush the toilet. It spins like a little vortex going down. And if there's ricocheting greens and blues in it from sunlight, I think I got an idea what's going on here, especially if we're in the ocean. It is trying desperately to hand me the illusion. It's not trying to cast me off its mighty back, not trying to crush me beneath its terrible, terrifying weight. I know what it is. Yes, it is the ultimate wave. A surfer is going down